Tea time.
Welcome everybody! Souldin of the Grin brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. And I actually got this in the wrong place. Let me just wiggle this out of the way. Okay, yeah. Okay. Let's throw that down there. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Now probably. Oh gosh, that would have all picked up. Oh, sorry about that. Welcome everybody! Souldin the Grin brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. And then for today's tea, it's an interesting case. I accidentally missed out on yesterday's calendar tea. I was really late at my Christmas job, and ended up not being able to get the bus. And there's a whole funny story about that, which you probably may have heard already in a Grin Brothers episode. I'll be mentioning in the first playthrough of the year. But in any case, I'm going to be having two teas today. Yesterday's tea and today's tea. So yesterday's tea was unfortunately peppermint tea. Which, as you all know, I hate mint. And it's a herbal tea. Brew time is 3 to 5 minutes. And information on it: a cult classic minty fresh tea known as the stomach healer because of its numerous medical benefits. Big peppermint leaves are used to ensure big flavour. Now, I've been actually having some problems with my stomach and my bowels recently, so hopefully this will help. But I've got it with milk because I cannot stand mint. I can smell it, and okay. I'm going to try this one straight away and leave the other one for the end of the episode. 3, 2, 1. Ugh. Okay, not too bad when I was having it first. The milk disguised the flavour, but then the mini aftertaste. It's like a teeth. Ugh. Blah. Yeah, the milk tries to disguise the taste, but the mint aftertaste kicks in, and it's like cleaning my teeth. It's just dreadful. Ugh. Cannot stand that. I'm gonna wash my mouth out with this water. There. That should have cleaned it all out. Ugh. I hate mint so much. But that was peppermint tea. Ugh. And I can now actually get on to the this particular tea time. And this particular tea time, kind of a sporadic one. But then again, the announcement that ended up resulting in this tea time discussion came out of nowhere. It was completely unexpected. And that is my thoughts on the recently announced Xbox Series X. After all, it was announced at the Game Awards. I didn't watch the Game Awards myself, but suddenly I sort of saw have pop up, hey, Xbox's new console is out. So I'm like, what? So I've watched the trailer, I've watched some information videos of, given a bit of time to get some juicy details come out about it. Not much at this present time. They're clearly saving some of it for a good chunk of it for E3. It makes sense. But it's actually really interesting they decided to try to get a one-up on Sony and sort of present it at the Game Awards, as they did, give a preview of what it looks like and such. And there are still thoughts that can be based around what it looks like and the small details we do know about Xbox Series X. I guess first things first, it seems like Microsoft is competing with Nintendo for the worst named system ever invented, because Xbox Series X is a terrible name, to the point that people have now been naming it the Xbox Sex or the Sexbox. Yeah, okay, so Microsoft, why? There hasn't been a proper explanation yet. There's rumours that it could be that there's this series part of it means there's going to be multiple versions of it, but still a case of it's just going to cause consumer confusion. Then again, consumers apparently weren't too confused by Xbox One, or then again, the Xbox One didn't do nearly as well as the PS4, so maybe they did get confused. Who knows? In any case, Xbox Series X is a stupid name, and whilst I prefer the idea of calling it Xbox Scarlet, based off its project name, they often end up actually being cooler than the actual name of the consoles, these project names. The problem there is there's no red or scarlet colours on the new Xbox. It's Xbox Series X is a black monolith sort of design, or a black sort of PC tower, or a black fridge, as people say. But I've got to say, in terms of the console design, whilst the colour isn't exactly amazing, I would prefer a white console. I do have a lot of things I do like about it. I like the fact that it's a vertical console, as standard. That said, it can be turned on its side to be horizontal. But I like the fact that they went with a vertical look to it. It already made it more unique from that perspective alone. A small touch, but it allowed it to stand out a bit more. And I like the sort of green energy, sort of they've got a giant fan, sort of cooling fan on the top, a sort of vent to let out the heat. and it's got a soft green glow to it, which is super important because, of course, Xbox, it's always associated with green. Along with that, there's, in general, I just kind of like the vertical orientation. It's a very simple design. It's not actually that big, which is kind of interesting, but it looks like it's got a good enough presence. I guess the one thing, it's definitely got a disk drive. That's real good, and that's particularly going to be useful for one of its key features. There was worries that at this point they would be trying to go diskless, but thankfully not. So, good. Your retail stores are going to be supported still, and I'll actually be buying games for it if I decide to get it, or when I decide to get it. The only other thing I'd say critically about the console design itself is I kind of wish the Xbox branding, the Xbox X, was bigger. I imagine that's going to be working as the power button, but I wish it was bigger, had more of a presence to scream, "This is Xbox!" It feels like they're kind of shying away from it being an Xbox with that sort of design. Again, it feels, in part, it feels like it's that whole design template of trying to blend in the living room or the front room without, standing out too much. But at the same time, from what I've heard about discussions about its design process, it was actually not really intentionally designed as anything. Apparently, Phil Spencer went to the engineers and said, "Look, these are the specs we need. These are the minimum specs we need. Make a console based off these specs. Don't worry about the design. We'll worry about that later." Whereas normally they come up with a design and say, "Okay, could you fit these your specs you've made into this design?" But instead, no. They said, "Just do whatever you think is best for getting the most power and efficiency out of it," which I think is really interesting and really cool to hear about that detail. Let's see. Okay, so thoughts outside of that. Now, I didn't really bother with trying to learn too many about the details of it because specs will go completely over my head. Apparently, it's capable of running in 120 frames per second, but honestly, I don't care if it can run in 120 frames per second. It can run in 30 frames per second for video games. So long as that 30 frames per second is stable, I won't mind. 30, 50, 60, I don't care about the quality of the frames per second per se, but the stability of it. How high the frames per second, I can barely notice the difference between 30, 50 or 60, but I can notice the difference when it starts dropping or increasing and spiking at random moments. So stability to me is far more important than the frames per second. But if it can reach 120 frames per second, and is apparently either 2 times or 4 times more powerful than the Xbox One X, a little bit unclear on the confirmation of that. Some sources say 2 times as powerful, sometimes 4 times as powerful. If it is capable of that much strength and it's capable of that many frames per second, it should in theory be able to do 60 frames per second with great stability. So I shouldn't have to worry about it being 60 frames per second consistently. Again, it's going to be 4K capable. Not really a concern at the moment, but that's future-proofing. Makes sense to do. Microsoft are on the ball with HD TV's adoption rate, so maybe by the sort of next few years, 4K will actually have come down in price. Pricing has not been confirmed of the Xbox Series X yet, so of course still a bit unclear of that. I mean, this video I hope to have out before E3, when they of course are going to reveal more and more information about it. So I hope it's not too expensive, but then again, I'm not sure if I'm getting it day one or not. I guess to say, oh yeah, and there's a controller. The new controller looks cool. It doesn't look too different. I'm a little disappointed, but also a little thumbs up. They didn't change too much of the controller. They've adjusted it a little, but they know what works now. The D-pad is based off the Elite one, and that's going to be really interesting to try out, and it's unique as a D-pad. So I'm nice that it's got that little touch. And the share button, if I do decide to get online with it, is a great little feature. And puts in parity with the sort of PS4 and probably PS5 sort of share features and kind of the Nintendo Switches. I mean, I've had a lot of fun saving screenshots on the Nintendo Switch, but I don't have any online connectivity or Twitter or anything like that, so I've not been able to post them up anywhere. Let's see, what was it? I guess the one thing I'd say I'm disappointed about with the Xbox Series X is it doesn't really do too much in terms of innovation with its controller. I guess I'm being a little bit too hopeful that someone will pick up on that idea that was apparently rumoured in regard to the Nintendo Switch, which was the mouse wheel shoulder buttons, which I think are a really cool idea. Be able to scroll through menus with the mouse wheel, sub-menus and such. Say Fable, you can scroll through your magic with the mouse wheel and then click the button to use the magic, would be an amazing idea. And speaking of Fable, before I talk about some of the other features revealed, there's lots of rumours that Fable 4 is being made by Playground Games, and that's still happening consistently. And you know what? Fable 4 is effectively my determining factor as to whether I get an Xbox Series X at launch. I have more money than I really need, again, because I don't really have any friends, so... I have more money than I know what to do with. So if I decide to get an Xbox Series X on launch, I can do that as a possibility. But my confirmation as to whether I will get an Xbox Series X on launch is pretty much, is Fable 4 real and is it a launch title? Well, there needs to be a launch title to interest me, obviously, but Fable 4 would be an instant determining factor of, yes, I will get that at launch. Otherwise, it's going to need at least 5 titles to interest me for me to decide to purchase the system, much like there was several titles that were interested me in the Xbox One when I got it, and then, conveniently, a uniquely designed, the crystal white Xbox One with the Sunset Overdrive packed in was coming out, and that was just the perfect sort of console for me in terms of what I was wanting. Ironically, I've had a lot of fun with the Xbox One. Actually, no, I'll save that for a future tea time. My thoughts on the Xbox One, closer to when that's closing out, as it were. But talking about the previous console, okay. In the other case of the Xbox Series X, if Fable 4 doesn't come out, or if it's a later title, the other thing that would convince me to get Xbox Series X, regardless of probably before the Fable 4, is if along with having several games I'm interested in, like 3 to 5, preferably 5, it would also be the case of it having a unique colour design. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the black design for it, so if they have a different colour design, I mean, of course, I'd love an orange design. Unlikely to ever happen, but a green design would be awesome. I would love it to be green, something more unique. I guess I can kind of compensate with a white or grey design, but the black design doesn't do well for me, so not really how I prefer my consoles. Well, the Sega Mega Drive worked well with black, but In any case, the big feature of the Xbox Series X, which is like the one feature I just needed to mention, and it's like, that is probably a future purchase because that is an amazing feature. Good job. Backwards compatibility with everything Xbox, which is amazing. Apparently, you'll be able to play classic Xbox, Xbox 360, and Xbox One games. Xbox One games, yeah, should be pretty easy. But the Xbox 360 and the classic Xbox Ones, I'm kind of curious as to how they're doing it. Are they saying that they'll be using the Xbox Series X to be able to play them naturally, or will it be like how the Xbox One does it, where it downloads the games, which means only certain classic Xbox and certain 360 games are compatible? Kind of curious which it is. Either way, it's a really cool idea. But if it's compatible with any Xbox game, that means I'll be able to buy any Xbox game that I'm interested in and just pop it in and play it. Whereas if it's the Xbox One style of doing it, I'll have to look up a list of what classic Xbox games I'm interested in that happen to also be on that compatible list. That's the thing. Like, I recently watched the Sega Southern game, I believe that's his name, Dead or Alive Retrospective, so I'm really interested in Dead or Alive 3, which was, classic Xbox, and the older Dead or Alive games. I'd love to be able to play those, but I don't have an Xbox. However, if the Xbox Series X could play those, that would solve my problem straight away. I don't need to worry about buying a classic Xbox. From what I heard, older sort of controllers and peripherals will also be compatible with the Xbox Series X. So from what I hear, it's possible that the Xbox 360 controllers will be compatible. Probably not the classic Xbox. There doesn't look to be a controller for them. There may be an adapter they may make for it, but hopefully, I'll be able to get the Duke controller working at some point. Again, it's suffering drift, and I haven't been able to get a replacement for it, because whilst I've got it on warranty, no one can find new Duke controllers in the, Duke controllers to sort of swap over in the game stores, so unfortunate. But yeah, the backwards compatibility is an amazing thing. I'm really glad that Microsoft are hammering in with this. They managed to stick it to Sony as a big sort of key factor of why to buy a Microsoft Xbox One over the Sony system. And it was a key point that they've continued to be able to have dominance over. From right here, Sony's PlayStation 5 is going to be able to be backwards compatible with the PS4. That's definitely something they're hoping to get. But the PS3 backwards compatibility seems like it's never going to occur. So Microsoft will always have a good lead over them in that. I'm curious as to what games Microsoft's going to be working on. They have got like 15 studios in total to work on exclusive games for the Xbox Series X. Oh gosh, saying with so many Xboxes is a bit of a tongue twister. Yeah. It's looking really cool, but I won't be convinced to buy one until either Fable 4 or a unique colour design plus multiple games I'm interested in. Until now, I'll stick to the Xbox One and the Nintendo Switch for my gaming platforms. The problem is that before, in like the previous gen, the Wii U, I could have probably gone with being a Wii U solo player just fine, because I really love the Wii U. But there were plenty of great games I played on the Xbox One that I would have sorely missed out on. But in this gen, the Nintendo Switch just hasn't got much personal attachment to me. I've enjoyed a couple of games on it, but nothing to really make me sort of say, oh, I could be a Nintendo Switch dedicated player sort of thing. Whereas the so, you know, at this point, I still feel the need to buy a secondary console. The Xbox, you know, if I have a choice between an Xbox One or a Nintendo Switch game, which is, you know, multi-platform between the two, I'll actually be going with the Xbox One each time. Which, that was a lucky save with Bloodstained, because the Nintendo Switch version was apparently terrible, so... But that's because I prefer the feel of the Xbox One sort of system over the Nintendo Switch sort of thing. So, once again, I feel the need to have another system. So, eventually, I probably will get an Xbox Series X. But, again, if Fable 4's a launch title or available within the launch window, it may be on launch day I pick myself an Xbox Series X. My lack of friends, meaning I have lots of money aside, is actually coming in handy. Yay! In any case, my next tea is the Rose Congo tea. It's a black tea. Brew time is 3 to 5 minutes, and of course it's coming from my tea calendar, so it's the Darvels of Windsor brand. Information on it: it's a Chinese black tea scented with carefully layered rose petals, resulting in a sweet, perfumed and soothing cuppa. An ideal tea for the afternoon that is packed with rich flavour. Well, it's very definitely night now rather than afternoon, but in any case, let's try Rose Congo here, brewed for 4 minutes without milk. Oh, that is extremely bitter. Very, very, very bitter. The flavour hits you immediately. That is impactful. Ooh. That's a nice aftertaste. I'm not a fan of how bitter. It's a bit too strong. However, the aftertaste is actually really nice on the tongue. It kind of smoothly goes down it. Okay, I forgot to bring a spoon, so my finger's going to have to do for stirring. I've poured some milk in. I actually kept some milk aside, just so I can try it both ways. Maybe list down my preference afterwards. Okay, let's add a bit more milk in. Okay, swirl, 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 swirl. Okay, and now let's try Rose Congo brewed for 4 minutes with milk. Okay, maybe I added a bit too much milk, but definitely improves the initial flavour. And the aftertaste doesn't dissipate too much. It alters a little bit. The aftertaste isn't quite as good with the milk. As in, not even the fact you can't notice it, it changes its aftertaste to a degree. Not the intensity of it, but how it tastes. And it's not as good as before, but I think I'll take that over the initial taste being a lot better with milk. So yeah, I'm going to say preference with milk, but aftertaste is better without milk, but it's less striking with milk, though, on the initial taste. Yeah, very powerful tea. But very interesting that they say soothing. You know, when a powerful burst of flavour doesn't sound soothing to me, and doesn't feel soothing having tasted it. So, I'm not sure I agree with it being a soothing cuppa, at least until you've added milk to it. I guess if you're lingering, you know, you're taking sips every now and again. But yeah, it's a bit too strong. Maybe brew time for 3 minutes to get the soothing quality, but the longer minute time is definitely not too soothing. With milk, makes it soothing again. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Rose Congo tea, and that was my thoughts on the Xbox Series X. I'm potentially looking forward to it. Again, I'm definitely got a keen eye on E3 this year for Microsoft. Definitely interested. I mean, like, Sony's going to have to do a lot to win me over, given a lot of their current policies and such. So in terms of the secondary system, I'm probably going to be sticking with Microsoft. But it's a matter of when I get the system. And E3 is going to be a big determining factor. But I like a lot of what I've seen. I'm interested in it. And we'll see how things go from here. I look forward to hearing more about it. And feel free to tell me what you think about the Xbox Series X. Feel free to tell me what you think about its initial reveal, its reveal trailer, the timing of its reveal, and what few details we know about it so far. Admittedly, again, this video will probably be uploaded maybe May or June, unless I upload it much quicker. It'll be uploaded before E3 2020, so more details probably would have already emerged. But in any case, feel free to tell me what you think, and I hope you've enjoyed this tea time. Cheerio!